everybody. Welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Die. Nate and Francis back from our mid-year vacations that end up happening because, it's done with COVID, so we all had to kind of run out the door for a little bit. But we're back. It's June. I want to say we're fully into spring, but like it keeps being 60 degrees here, which is actually normal. That's like what spring should be, but I'm so used to like melting into the sidewalk by mid-May that it's very surprising to me to still have days that are like, not cold, but cool, 60 degrees. That's weird. That's weird for me in June. So not hating it. Went for a run this morning, so it's not too bad. We're kind of getting back to things. How's things on your side of the pond? How's the pandemic going for you guys these days?
Well, the pandemic we had yesterday was the first day without 0 deaths announced in a really long time. Rather, I'd say it had 0 deaths announced. There was the first day in a while that we had no deaths whatsoever. Obviously, there's a new Indian variant, and they're worried about that spreading out of control. And some other European countries are like closing borders to the British because of that variant. I've gotten my first shot. They're spreading out the rate at which people are being vaccinated. Basically, like they make you wait 3 months between your first and second shot. So I had the Pfizer shot, and I was fine. I mean, my arm was sore, and that was about it. And Cynthia's going to get her second shot here shortly. My second shot is scheduled for August. We're not going anywhere, but the weather got nice, so I've actually decided this week I'm going to work from home all week and just go for runs and ride my bike outside and enjoy it. It's, probably the highs are probably in the mid 70s, maybe up to like the low 80s, but it does feel quite hot in the sun because you're really far in the northern hemisphere, so you're at a high enough latitude that when you're in the sun, it is quite bright and it does feel very hot. But then as soon as you get in the shade, you realize that the ambient temperature is not that hot. I went for a run yesterday, and I definitely had to wear a hat and sunglasses just because like it's just intense sun, but it's beautiful. It felt great, just unreal nice. It's supposed to be maybe a little rainy over the weekend, but it actually seems like it's holding. And the weather you've been describing, and like my friends in New York were describing it being like in the 50s and rainy over Memorial Day weekend. That's basically what it's been like since October here until like last week. So don't get me wrong, like if you're in a house with low ceilings and no AC and no shade in the UK, like it does get hot as hell. Like people get kind of pent up about it because it's hot in those. But the good news is, because the actual ambient temperature is relatively low, like it cools down into like the 60s or 50s at night. Like at least at this time of year, it does actually cool off. And in the shade, it's gorgeous. And so when I was out of the park yesterday running, I saw, families and kids. There was a fun fair. There were kids fishing. There were people like who were like doing like camping on the. You can rent passes to camp on the lakefront. There were people just hanging out, barbecuing. People hanging out, having picnics. It was just gorgeous. It was so nice. And like fair play to this, if like me, you're gonna constantly harp on how shit the United Kingdom is, you do have to in turn admit when things are nice. And I can say like this time of year when the weather is like this, you feel like you're in the nicest place on the planet. It's so nice, but it's only for a couple of months.
We're not going to praise the history, the politics of the people, but sometimes it feels nice to be here, and that counts for something.
I have a perhaps spicy take that, my favorite parts of the UK are sort of like when you encounter people who aren't really like. There is a kind of immigrant culture in the big cities here that's super cool. People are just like really cool. Like they want to work. They want to like, work hard. They're just like, but they're also like chill people. Like, obviously if stuff goes down, people will absolutely throw down here. Like that's the thing that I've noticed. No guns means people will fight, but it's like a very like cool kind of don't care where you're from, just have the right attitude kind of place. The thing about it is that like that's such a small minority in England. Like most of England is just Baz. And I recognize that people are probably tired of hearing me complain about this place, but most of England is just kind of like grim and shitty. No joke. But the cities that people are afraid of, like basically I made the joke that this place is like big Indiana, and here are my 3 points of comparison. 85% white. The 85% who are white are convinced that the 15% who aren't white are doing knockout game 24/7, and that the cities are like, Fort Apache, the Bronx level of just, complete, escape from New York war zone. And they're both obsessed with a period of past greatness that they think is still relevant For the United Kingdom, it's the British Empire, and for Indiana, it's the 2007 Super Bowl. And the fact of the matter is, no one cares anymore.
I think that England has. I'm going to say, if people are tired of hearing you complain about England, to be fair, all we do on Twitter is complain about America. So it's nice to hear that other places are also shit. It is also sad to hear that the Great Escape Plan of we all go back to our lily white homes of England is not that
homes.
Great. Right, our incestual homes.
In seriousness, like, I have been thinking a lot, and Cynthia and I have both been thinking a lot about moving back eventually. Like, not anytime soon, because like that just wouldn't be feasible, but in the long term. And it's less to do with being like, I dislike England, and more to do with the fact that I don't think this will ever really truly feel like home. And I would also say that America, for better or worse, is home, and it's not going to get better unless we fix the fucking problems. And that's going to take people. And, it's like, maybe that's idealistic. Maybe that's, maybe I should just shut up because I'm in a position of incredible privilege to have been accidentally born with UK citizenship. But to me, at least, when I think of home,
it's not like it's better there, though. Like
no, it's different. There's some things you don't have to worry about, and there's some things that you don't have to worry about in America that you do have to worry about here. And I just, for better or worse, like, I think, because of the pandemic and because of all the stuff going on, we haven't been back to the US it'll be 2 years in October. And I strongly doubt we're going to have any reason or opportunity to travel back to the US between now and October. So that'll be the longest I've been out of the country since I was a little kid, when we moved to Germany when I was 5, and I just didn't come back to America until we moved back. Yeah, man, I mean, I genuinely miss home, and also I realized that it is home, and that, like, one of the things that
it's a fucked up place, but I mean, it's our fucked up place. It's like, I will defend my shitty, racist, full of bullshit city until I'm blue in the face, because it's mine. And that's we all have our weaknesses for the place, because I know the people here, and I know that they're not bad people. I know that shit is run by millionaires and billionaires, and there's not a whole lot that I can do about it. But the people on my block who live in houses that cost as much as my house does, which is not hundreds of thousands of dollars, they're all cool people that are just just trying to go about their day. So, like, I know, like, I like to shit on, we like to shit on New Yorkers, we like to shit on lieutenants, we like to shit on people in a grand whole kind of thing, because it's fun and it's silly. But for the most part, though, people in New York are just normal ass people.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing too.
There's a bunch of Andrew Yangs running around the place, and then there's a bunch of assholes who would vote for Andrew Yang, because who else are they going to vote for? You don't have any other better Democrat on the bill.
Well, yeah, and also it's name brand recognition. Yeah. I think, because, like, yeah, you had, I mean, without derailing it too much into the politics of New York City mayoral stuff is always really bad. It just always is bad. And so you're in a situation where you have ex-cop, ex-Republican, who's one of his campaign videos was like, parents, here's how to do a search of your children's home or your children's bedroom for paraphernalia. You have Andrew Yang, who's just a fucking airhead, and who is a stalking horse for Bloomberg and Giuliani people to get back into City Hall. You have Catherine Garcia, who, I mean, but for all accounts, seems to be like the sort of tolerable, like, sort of center-left moderate, but is like really in favor of charter schools. You have Dianne Morales, who, from what I can tell, his campaign is completely imploded because she's been committing labor violations left and right on her own staff, and she's literally the leftmost candidate. And you had the former comptroller, Scott Stringer, who was, from what I can tell, accused of sexual assault and has tanked in the polls. I may be missing some people because I haven't really super closely been paying attention to it. But at the end of it all, it's like, it's bad no matter what. And I mean, on one hand, America can breathe easily because no one ever makes it out of New York City politics onto the national stage, ever. Like, not since.
How much higher do you need to go at that point? Like, you run.
Well, no,
when you run New York City,
so corrupt that and so screwed up, and there's always problems, and it's such a weird, different animal to any other political machine in America. The likelihood of running for governor after being New York City mayor is actually kind of low because, quite frankly, a lot of people have to vote for you who don't like the city at all. And I mean, if you look at the people who have previously been mayors who have gone, like, as I understand it, the last time someone got to national office straight out of the New York City mayor office was like immediately post not World War II, immediately post the Civil War. Like, if you go back and you look at people like Fiorello LaGuardia might have been able to do it, but he died of cancer, like, I think not too long after he left office as the mayor. Roosevelt was the governor, not the mayor. Obviously, Giuliani was a nightmare. And as soon as people met Giuliani and they saw him on a national stage, they realized how much of a horrible person he is. De Blasio got like 0 votes in the primary for president. He's a complete moron, and he's just really lazy and bad at his job. Dinkins was a one-term mayor.
The ones you got to worry about are from my state, the Josh Hawleys and the Eric Greitens, because we're absolutely going to elect.
No, and you think about it too. It's like the situation that we're in New York, where our 2 senators are Kirsten Gillibrand and Chuck Schumer. And I mean, Gillibrand was sort of like one of the lefter, and when I say left, I mean for a Democrat, which means like centrist senators. But she'll never be forgiven by moms of the Democratic Party and white women in America who vote Democrat, because she said Al Franken should step down for sexual harassment. And as we've learned, the Me Too movement stalled when you actually had to start holding Democratic leaders accountable. I mean, because we know Republicans aren't ever gonna, they don't give a shit. Like, if anything, it's a campaign bonus for them to be sexist freaks. But the minute that stuff got close to people like the Clintons or Joe Biden or Andrew Cuomo or Al Franken, for that matter, people started saying, no, Republicans wouldn't do it. Why should we? If I remember correctly, there was a lieutenant governor in Virginia who was credibly accused of rape, and he didn't step down, and they're like, yeah, why should he? The excuse is now, Republicans wouldn't. And it's gross as hell, but hilariously, Gillibrand's career has basically been, in my opinion, probably permanently stalled because she sided on saying Franken should step down because of sexual harassment. And if that's not a fucking metaphor for the Democratic Party and the politics in a state like New York, then, man, I don't even know.
What is becoming an adult in politics but a series of shattered delusions,
Well, yeah, and I mean, well, the weird thing is that, like, look, man, we'll go on to our main story in a second, but the thing that I would say about New York City politics for people who aren't familiar with New York and aren't familiar with the way things go down there, is that Andrew Cuomo, if you do not live in New York or you're not familiar with New York State politics, you understand something. Andrew Cuomo is one of the worst politicians in America. He's incredibly corrupt. He's incredibly egocentric. He's a genuinely horrible person. They're famously in New York City, in New York State politics, there's like 3 people in the room. If I remember correctly, it's the Senate leader, the Speaker of the Assembly, and the governor. 2 of the 3 of those guys went to prison for corruption under Cuomo. Cuomo didn't get touched because he managed to stop the investigations. And famously, he had a commission to investigate corruption that he shut down mid-commission and his excuse was, it's my commission, I can do what I want with it. If you've ever heard of a thing called the Independent Democratic Caucus, basically Cuomo found a bunch of safe seat Democrats in the state legislature and strong-armed them, or more or less persuaded them to break away from the Democratic whip and caucus on their own, which meant caucusing with Republicans, because he needed to stop progressive legislation from reaching his desk, because he didn't want to have to veto it, because he wanted to run for national office, but he didn't want to have to have been the governor that either approved, a state public health option or vetoed one, or he didn't want to be the governor that vetoed marijuana because he wouldn't pass it. He didn't want to be like, we didn't have early voting in New York until very recently because the IDC blocked it. So much of what goes on, like basic stuff they have in other states, they didn't have in New York because Cuomo refuses to sign it, and he just engineered a way to make sure the Republicans had enough, scare quotes, independent Democratic votes on their side to prevent any of this from happening. Now, as I understand it, they primaried those people, and like they're actually passing new shit in New York. Cuomo didn't want to pass a mansion tax. Cuomo didn't want to pass a pied-à-terre tax. Cuomo didn't want to pass a new yacht tax. Like, if I remember correctly, in New York State, you didn't pay any taxes on the purchase price of a new yacht above $500,000. Like, it's an absolute joke, and it's all Andrew Cuomo's fault. And he is such a horrible piece of shit. But because he gave press conferences and looked jacked, basically all these people fell in love with him for a while in America, outside of New York State. But I'm telling you, man, as my brief foray and the place that I consider home, my sort of my take on it, man. Fuck that guy so much. And just like, and that's your blue state. That's your big blue state with a permanent blue state majority. That's what it looks like.
Yeah, he's Vince McMahon, basically, just without like the cool wrestling. He's just some jacked dipshit who's in charge of things for a reason that nobody can explain.
And I speak this from the position of a person who's heavier than they want to be right now. Although I'm doing better at overall since the pandemic began, because I just quit drinking entirely. But Cuomo used to look like a guy whose nickname would be Joey Meatballs, who was like a bouncer outside of a shitty Italian disco in the Lower East Side or something, or in Little Italy. He used to look like if Andre the Giant had been bullied in school. And I guess he figured out some fitness plan that works for him. But yeah, Cuomo, I mean, folks, if you're not familiar with the story of the Cuomos, when Andrew Cuomo's father, Mario Cuomo, was running for mayor, it was sort of presumed, and this was never confirmed, but it was sort of presumed that Ed Koch, who wound up winning the mayorship after the fiscal crisis in the 70s, it was presumed that he was gay, but he was never out. He never came out. And so Cuomo's campaign went around like the really Guido areas of Brooklyn and Queens, plastering up ads that said, "Vote for Cuomo, not the homo." Like, I'm dead serious. Like, they've always been shit. The only thing is that if you go and you listen to Mario Cuomo's address to the Democratic National Convention in 1984, it's like to the left of Bernie. Like, that's how far the Democrats have shifted right. So, oh God, I could talk forever about bad New York politics, but we're not going to talk about New York politics today because, quite frankly, I haven't been back to New York in 2 years. I haven't lived in New York in 3 years.
Let's talk about something you haven't done for even longer, which is the military.
Be in the Army. No, man, we're going to talk about Joe being Joe. I want everyone to understand the overarching position of this episode is not that this is a comment on one thing or the other so much as just it's a snapshot of what happens when Joe gets a little buck wild. In this case, studying for exams about incredibly sensitive secrets, using open source materials. So we've got a doozy of a story that we cribbed from the often problematic Bellingcat. Now, the headline of this story is U.S. soldiers expose nuclear weapons secrets via flashcard apps.
Now, and I want to, like, when I originally saw this, I thought that I was a part of this problem because, so every year, those of you who are not in the Army, every year you have to do like these online training courses. Like, you know, don't be a shitty driver. Don't, you know, how to do law of war, how to anti-terrorism, you know, 101 kind of stuff. They're all like online courses. They take an hour or two to go through. It's all bullshit. And then you get to a quiz at the end. You take the quiz, you pass, you know, you get 7 out of 10 right. You print out the thing, you hand it to your sergeant. The sergeant hands it off to somebody else, and then your name comes off the naughty list. Somewhere your name falls off of a list of having to do these things. Now, of course, nobody actually wants to sit through an hour or two of these classes, and most of them allow you to just like skip ahead or just like, you know, just keep skipping ahead the PowerPoint thing so you can blow right through it, or you can just skip directly to the quiz. Now, this doesn't mean I actually know the answers to the things it's going to ask. So I would go on this website called Quizlet, which most of us would use in the Army, that always seem to have all of the answers as flashcards. So these little, like, the question, and you click it, and the flashcard flips over, and then you've got the answer. So, but this seems to be a little bit different because I think these are soldiers uploading stuff onto these flashcards, like rather than going to the PX and buying like some 3x5 index cards and like handwriting it down, flipping it over to see it. Like, we actually have a problem here where people are uploading things to a open source thing where anybody can go like, oh, I want to use your flashcard. Hey, specialist, can I use your flashcards? Yeah, let me go ahead and email it to you. Like, haha, little did he know that I'm actually in ISIS. And now I know where the nukes are.
So I'm going to read this because to me, I remember when you had like armystudyguide.com and things like that studying for the board. But the point, I think, before we read the details of this piece that it's important to establish is that typically these exams are incredibly lazily maintained, in my experience. There's a relatively limited set of questions, and like your high school chemistry exams, they just shuffle around the questions or they change the numbers, but the concepts are the same. So if you know what to study for, then you know what to study. You know what I mean? Like, Which hilariously in high school I didn't realize how this worked, but in college I suddenly realized, oh, that's what they mean. Like, learn how to do the problems, and this is the exact kind of problems that'll be on the test. So that's what's going on here. So I'm going to start reading. For U.S. soldiers tasked with the custody of nuclear weapons in Europe, the stakes are high. Security protocols are lengthy, detailed, and need to be known by heart. To simplify the process, some service members have been using publicly visible flashcard learning apps, inadvertently revealing a multitude of sensitive security protocols about U.S. nuclear weapons and the bases at which they are stored. While the presence of U.S. nuclear weapons in Europe has long been detailed by various leaked documents, photos, and statements by retired officials, their specific locations are officially still a secret, with governments neither confirming nor denying their presence. As many campaigners and parliamentarians in some European nations see it, this ambiguity has often hampered open and democratic debate about the rights and wrongs of hosting nuclear weapons. However, the flashcards studied by soldiers tasked with guarding these devices reveal not just the bases, but even identified the exact shelters with hot vaults that likely contain nuclear weapons.
I'm curious as to like what these tests entail, to where it's just like, all right, quickly draw a map of all of our current hot nuclear silos or something.
I mean, if I had to guess, it would be like, here's the things you have to memorize for security protocols to get into this bunker at this base, and like anyone who knows, like one of the examples he's given is basically people like a company formation taking a photo with a guide on and a mock nuclear weapon in front of a bunker at a Dutch Air Force base, and it's just like, yeah, I wonder if they have nukes in there. I'll continue reading. They also detail intricate security details and protocols, such as the positions of cameras, the frequency of patrols around the vaults, secret duress words that signal when a guard is being threatened, and the unique identifiers that a restricted area badge needs to have. Like their analog namesakes, flashcard learning apps are popular digital learning tools that show questions on one side and answers on the other. By simply searching online for terms publicly known to be associated with nuclear weapons, Bellingcat was able to discover cards used by military personnel serving at all 6 European military bases reported to store nuclear devices. Experts approached by Bellingcat said that these findings represented serious breaches of security protocols and raised renewed questions about U.S. nuclear weapons deployment in Europe. Dr. Jeffrey Lewis, founding publisher of ArmsControlWonk.com and director of the East Asia Non-Proliferation Program at the James Martin Center for Non-Proliferation Studies, said that the findings showed a, quote, flagrant breach, unquote, in security practices related to U.S. nuclear weapons stationed in NATO countries. He added that, quote, secrecy about U.S. nuclear weapons deployments in Europe does not exist to protect the weapons from terrorists, but only to protect politicians and military leaders from having to answer tough questions about whether NATO's nuclear sharing arrangements still make sense today. This is yet one more warning that these weapons are not secure, unquote.
We're keeping it secret so politicians don't have to answer hard questions about why there are American nukes in their country. It's just a wild which is very true. Like, I mean,
I'll say it's 100% true, but I mean, yeah, like when I read that, it's like
weird to hear it. Yeah, it's weird to hear it out loud.
What's funny is I'm actually mutuals with that guy on a side note.
Oh, so yeah, me too.
I'll see if I can get him. Maybe we can get him on the show.
You should be following Arms Control Wonk. He's good. He's got some good nuke stuff.
But the point I'm making here is, yeah, like I agree with him, and it's just funny because I think that, for example, in countries that don't have nuclear weapons programs, like the Netherlands, for example, I imagine they'd probably not be very happy. And you probably would, their significant green and anti-nuclear movements would probably make use of this information to perhaps protest and block shit at these bases. You know what I mean? So once again, it's a political thing. They're only able to avoid the political problem by deceiving people or creating a security justification for hiding it. And
it's really easy to find out where all the nuclear silos are because they run on like stuff that's so old. You just have to find out like where are vacuum tubes and like 1 foot diameter floppy disks being delivered around Europe. There's probably a nuke wherever that is. I know that we're upgrading everything, but I only see us going up to like 1970s or 80s technology after we leave the 1950s stuff behind.
Yeah, exactly. We won't use 5 1/4 floppy disks because those are obsolete. We'll just use 3 1/2.
We're gonna have a bunch of zip disks around.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. just in time for the first nuclear strike, they'll have discovered CDRWs. So
the secret of every other soldier has discovered is the CDRW, which is how to get a document off of this computer to give it to you, because I can't email it. I can't connect to you. This is a Nipper computer, so as soon as I send an email, 500 flags go up or everything. So the only thing I can do is burn it to a CD, and we just pass the CD back and forth, which is how pretty much everything like gets stolen from military bases now. Like,
yeah,
I think didn't Chelsea Manning steal?
Chelsea
stuff?
Manning basically what she did was she had access in a T-SCIF to all of these documents, and the computers that they were operating on were, set up to run on. So we may have discussed this in the past, but just as a quick sort of key to the discussion. Nipper is non-secure internet protocol relay, I believe, and SIPR is just secure. And when we were deployed, you'd have computers that had secure connections. They had red Ethernet cables. Nipper had green ones. And basically, computers were like, they had SIPR, they were imaged with SIPR drives. You couldn't cross them over. It used to be it wasn't a problem, but they had to install, like you could get away with it. But around 2008, this virus started hitting people's thumb drives because they were going from Nipper to SIPR and back and forth. And this virus was basically mapping all of the ports and connections on the SIPR network. And then when it got back on Nipper, was emailing it to a bunch of email addresses in China. And so like they wound up locking it down. But when Chelsea Manning was in the Army and was deployed to Iraq, which was, I think, around the same time I was, maybe a little after, like early 2010, in her T-SCIF, she was able to, so top secret compartmentalized information facility. She was able to just bring in CDRWs and put them in the disk drives of the computer she was working on. And when she just wrote like, Lady Gaga, the Fame Monster on it or something, I'm dead serious. Like she said she had burned Lady Gaga CDs to listen to, and she would just show them the CD and be like, oh yeah, I'm just listening to music, and no one would check. But what she was actually doing was these computers had CDRW capability. And so she was writing these documents and then pulling them off and then putting them on her personal laptop and transmitting them. And because back in those days you could. And, and also when you think about Chelsea Manning's situation, she saw a video that was very obviously, journalists being murdered. It was a war crime. But when you're a private in the Army in Intel, like you're supposed to report it to your first line supervisor, who's like, Staff Sergeant Numbnuts, who just said, go fuck yourself. And that's the formal complaint you can make. So she took it elsewhere.
I just want to say that we fully support Chelsea Manning and her stealing things and putting them on the internet. I am just going to say I'm very irritated though, because for a long time, we were so locked down on our computers we couldn't use an external mouse because USB ports were so turned off that you couldn't even use a mouse.
Yeah, I wasn't deployed until after I'd come home before Manning thing happened.
Was in Iraq in 2010, so like, holy shit, did things slam fucking shut really hard?
Because when I was deployed, we had access to SIPR everywhere. I mean, in places where we probably shouldn't. It was super easy. And it was really weird and disconcerting to me when I got to Honduras, because they had a SCIF, not even a T-SCIF, but the SCIF in Honduras obeyed the actual rules that a SCIF is supposed to have, compared to, so like, it was like, oh, we've got a secret connection in here. So you had to go through 4 different interlocking number code gates, meet reception, turn in your phones, get your badge, etc. Go into a room that had a white noise generator and stuff. And I remember as a young captain just being like, what the fuck is all this security theater? This is so stupid. Because I realized it because in Afghanistan, like it was just like, hey, you want a SIPR connection in the shitter? Here you go. Like it was completely open.
Yeah, deployment. Like you spend so much time in garrison, you're just like, you can't touch your rifle unless you're going to the range, and you have to do this with the rifle, and you have to be very careful, and it's just like drilled into you. And then you go to Iraq and Afghanistan, they're just like, yeah, you better take that into the fucking shower with you, bitch. Like, you're never anywhere without your gun. So like once you deploy, it's like all the things like, don't go around kicking trash, and then you go to Iraq and you have trash kicking contests with your buddies just because you're a bunch of dumbasses and everything overseas doesn't matter anymore. So it's wild, but it's also very obvious that it's very simple to steal from the Army, even accidentally, which I feel is what this article is telling us.
Yeah, exactly. Hans Christensen, director of the Nuclear Information Project at the Federation of American Scientists, broadly agreed and said safety is provided by, quote, effective security, not secrecy, unquote. Some flashcards uncovered during the course of this investigation have been publicly visible online as far back as 2013. Other sets detailed processes that were being learned by users until at least April 2021. It is not known whether secret phrases, protocols, or other security practices have been altered since then. However, all flashcards described within this article appeared to have been taken down from the learning platforms in which they appeared after Bellingcat reached out to NATO and the US military for comment prior to publication. A spokesperson for the Dutch Ministry of Defense stated that it was coordinating with NATO and US European Command, or EUCOM, after Bellingcat discovered a picture shown above shared on Facebook in 2013 of US service members posing with what appeared to be a dummy nuclear bomb at a base in the Netherlands. A spokesperson for the U.S. Air Force confirmed that they were aware of service members using flashcard apps to study a wide variety of subjects. However, they continued, there was no recommendation for service members to do so, and they would not discuss past or current security protocols. They also said they were not aware of any Department of Defense or Department of the Air Force assessment of the use of online study aids, but were, quote, investigating the suitability of information shared via study flashcards, unquote.
You know what this is? This is all those times that I should have been paying attention to my yearly OPSEC training. Yeah, now it's coming around.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm gonna.
This is a very long article. We don't have to read the whole thing.
We don't have to read the whole thing, but I want to point out some of these flashcards because they're absolutely ridiculous. Basically, for example, they're talking about aircraft shelters and things that are secured with weapon storage security systems, which is basically for nuclear weapons. And some of these flashcards are literally, how many weapons and security storage vaults are there on Volkel Air Base? And the answer is 11. And it's like, vault status. It literally gives the numbers of all the vaults and say they're hot versus cold. So they have nuclear weapons in them or they don't have them in them. Another one is, what is the weapons and security status response order? Level 1 hot, loaded vault facility. Level 1 cold, unloaded vault, non-vaulted structure. Level 2 hot, loaded vault. Level 2 cold, unloaded, not vault, noon vaulted structure. So basically, what they're saying is, like, here is the status. Here's what it means. Here's how many of these exist. Here's the numbers of vaults where the weapons are being contained. And it's like, these are bases in Belgium, bases in Turkey, bases in the Netherlands, bases in Germany. And
you know what this is? This is the equivalent of getting your identity stolen because you answered the what's your porn star name? It's the name of your cat versus like first name is the name of your first pet, and then the second name is the name of the street you grew up on, which is just like fishing for security questions. Like that's basically what we're doing here.
Yeah, exactly. But they're with regard to the U.S. storing,
but they're soldiers with nuclear bombs.
Yeah.
Wait, and this is, I know this is very surprising, but considering we've accidentally dropped nukes on ourselves more than once, this is very low to the ground on scary things with nukes.
Yeah, it's more a question, like I said, like, it's more a question of people being stupid and not realizing that this stuff is open source. I love the how to learn how to challenge people for a security challenge in Flemish. How to authenticate restricted area badges to make sure, like, literally, if you look at this, you could make a counterfeit and know how to make it correct.
I'm going to be the guy who's using the Flemish, who's never attempted to speak Flemish. Halt, politey, leg u wapens near, handen oop. I sound like the Swedish chef. I hope that gets me into a nuclear bunker, though. Oh, they've got little things so you can listen to how it's pronounced properly, so you can properly break into to these things. What are the authenticators on the restricted area badge? Holy shit. That is, okay, so a restricted area badge, like you get these badges. I had to wear one in Iraq when I was in our the operations center. It wasn't a TOC, it was whatever they have on the big ones. JOC, Joint Operations Center. So you have a badge and usually it's got a letter or a series of letters that says where you can go. It is very, very bad for anybody because these can be printed by anyone. Like these are not like, oh, these are super special. They have holographic things on it. Like generally, well, maybe they have them here. On our base, it was a printer and a laminator. And if you lost your badge, you got into a shitload of trouble because apparently they figured if you lost your badge, like one of the dudes that cleans the toilets is going to go into the skiff and steal a bunch of stuff. I don't know. So not great for everybody to be able to know what letters to put on a restricted access badge in Belgium to go to a nuclear silo, especially apparently if you speak Flemish, which gets you in anywhere.
Well, I mean, what they effectively they were able to do in this article, and they go into detail, is they were able to consult an open source or a scanned copy of a military map of this base in the Netherlands. They were able to find some numbered building vaults that shared the numbers of the ones on the flashcards. They were able to identify the bomb and the fact that it was a dummy munition, but that it was it was in the same style as the munition that would be carried as a thermonuclear bomb. The Dutch Ministry of Defense said that according to regulations at their bases, this photo should never have been taken, let alone published, but they did anyway.
Yeah, because they find out where it is using Google image search. Like, any photo you take if somebody is dedicated enough, they can probably find it.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was the thing that I remember happening during the whole thing with Bergdahl, was they were actually looking at videos of people giving statements, like when he was in captivity, and trying to see if they could, and I don't know if this was successful, but this was posited as a thing that the technology at least allowed them to attempt, to look at the reflections in people's sunglasses and see if they could identify any topographical features. Because if they could, then they might be able to sort of narrow down the location of where he was. So that's the kind of stuff that's available to people who actually, are doing imminent for a living. But just Google image searching, like, yeah, these guys on Bellingcat were able to figure this out. They were able to figure out the hangar where that photo was taken. They were able to figure out the names of the vaults that corresponded to the cards. Based off those cards, you legitimately could have fucking made a dummy security badge if you wanted to. And obviously this presumes a lot that people would want to or be able to, and they'd be able to get on the base in the first place. But it's just absolutely hilarious to me, because it shows how, for all of the talk and all of the rhetoric about how top secret and world saving this stuff is, when you actually get down to the people who are doing it, because it's their job, you realize how much of a fucking joke it is. Like, it's basically, being a nuclear janitor. And that, to me, I just think it kind of reveals how much the people in these countries don't get a say, and how much it's built into the system to sort of create what you might just call a release valve for democracy. Because I guarantee you, if the people in those communities knew for a fact that there were nuclear weapons being held, and obviously in a nuclear war scenario, that means that's an enormous target, but even more, it's just even if that's not the case, just the fact that they're there, and you have these stories of accidents, and you have stories of things like accidental release and stuff like that, that's all huge. That's a thing that people probably will get mad about. So in order to prevent them from getting mad and holding politicians to account, they just lie about it, or say, they just don't tell people the information. And it's well, on a long enough timeline, it's going to come out, and now you're going to look like even bigger assholes because you've been lying to people this whole time. And to me, I just find it really funny that the reason this happened was just Joe.
Joe being Joe,
Air Force Joe studying with an open source app. Because I remember a friend of mine, when he was studying to become an air defense officer, he was in the basic course, on the munitions systems that they studied, and they were I can't remember the names of them, but whatever their air defense munitions were, the air defense, weapons and their vehicles they were mounted on and stuff like that. He had to go into a skiff to study. He had to go into a skiff to read the manuals and to take notes to study with. He had to make his flashcards there in the skiff. And then I don't even think he was allowed to leave his note. He might have been able to leave his flashcards. I don't remember. But I know that all of his note sheets and stuff either had to be confiscated and held or had to be destroyed after each study session. So that's how seriously they took it, at the schoolhouse. But then these guys who are literally the dudes holding the keys to the nuclear bombs are just checking in out bomb square vault, checking in at bomb storage vault on Foursquare.
I'm the mayor of bomb storage vault number 17.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I drank this nuclear pale ale and checked into it on fucking Untapped or whatever it is. Man, it's hilarious to me, because this same phenomenon took place, I remember, in 2014 when the border conflict in eastern Ukraine started. That, or rather, picked up. I think it had been going on for longer than that. That, there were stories of Russian soldiers who are not Ukrainian and not, Ukrainian separatists, but actual active duty Russian soldiers like posting Instagram photos and selfies and stuff, on training exercises on the far western border of Russia. But actually, they were able to identify from Instagram, either because of geotagging or because of the terrain features around them, that these soldiers were obviously deployed inside Ukraine. And, it was less like, it's like this is a big groundbreaking thing because people knew this was happening, but there were all these official denials from the Russians that this was happening. And then it was like, here's evidence that you are in fact lying. And friend of the show, Milo Edwards, made a salient point a long time ago that the whole overall Russian foreign policy under Putin can just be described as like the cry laugh emoji. Like they just do shit to annoy you and to be like, haha, oh yeah, we're definitely not doing this thing that we're definitely doing. So that doesn't surprise me. But I do find it funny to have this turned that like, okay, dumb privates taking selfies and not realizing they're geotagging. I got it. That's a thing. And that's
the biggest worry you have from Russia at this point is being trolled. And like, if that's a real worry that you have, then yes, Russia is a grave danger to you. But like, for the rest of us, we're just going to get trolled by Russia and it's fine.
Well, no, I remember this happening where there was some interview taking place with Vladimir Putin, and he was having a conversation with some journalist or something like that. And I want to say, I can't remember what it was specifically the question was asked, but the journalist asked him something about, Russian people. It was like Russian troops in somewhere. Maybe it was in Ukraine. Maybe it was in Crimea. Maybe it was in Syria. I can't remember. But Putin, I guess the translator must have used the word for ethnic Russians instead of the word for Russian citizens. Now, it's very obvious what the person meant, but Putin immediately jumped on this and was like, well, what makes you think they're Russians? I mean, we've got lots of different races in Russia. We've got Tatars, we've got Uzbeks, we've got Kyrgyz, we've got Chechens, we've got Dagestanis. Like he was just doing that. Like that, it was 100% his vibe of just trolling the hell out of people and doing it with a straight face. And
you're saying that's Russians doing war crimes? Well, how do you
why
know?
Why are you being racist?
Why are you being so racist? It could be anybody doing war crimes.
Exactly. We've got lots of people that have Russian citizenship. And so it's just one of those things where, bringing it back to the point about these bases, it just makes me laugh because on one hand, you kind of expect that, that privates are going to be privates anywhere. And then if they're on exercises or they're deployed somewhere, now they have the ability to post photos that are tagged and so on and so forth. They will. But you kind of presume that Air Force people in Air Force bases where they store nuclear weapons, the Air Force famously like really big on, clearances and protocol and stuff in a way the Army isn't. I mean, anybody who's dealt with the Air Force knows that, most things in the Army, like if you have a problem, the expectation of junior leaders is like, get some duct tape and 550 cord and fucking fix it, which is just not the vibe of the Air Force at all.
Yeah. The Army and the Marines took message to Garcia and apply it to literally everything they do 100 years later. The Air Force at least attempts, but the problem is that, what do they say? You can make a foolproof security, but they'll just make a better fool. And like this is exactly the same. It's like, okay, we've trained them, we know we've locked these things down, we've done this, we've done that. And like a thing that nobody would think about because they're not 18, 19, 20-year-old Joe somewhere is, oh man, I got to study for these tests. We could do like our dads did and go get a bunch of index cards, or we have our phones, there's a shitload of apps. And like none of these apps, like first off, nobody's reading the end user license agreement anyway. But also I'm sure none of these apps are like, hey, by the way, this is like super secure. And you can do whatever you want. You can put whatever you want here and nobody's ever going to know about it. Like there are things like WhatsApp or Signal. There are things that are very secure, but nobody has told these young guns out here who are trying to learn Flemish challenge words that, hey, by the way, while you're at this, you really should not be doing this on something that is internet connected because that means that it's out there for anybody. And it's just a slip. And all you need to do is go up to them and say, hey, don't do that. And I'm sure they'll be like, oh shit, we can't do that. Well, let's figure something else out. But nobody did that until now.
This reminds me of the whole thing with Strava, which we've talked about, and Trash Futures talked about too, where Strava's heat maps for people wearing the apps going running were, released publicly And it just, it was one of those things where it was like an opt out and not opt in thing for sharing your data on the heat map. And so, all of these like extremely motivated dudes out running the perimeter of the bases in Afghanistan or Syria or Mali or, Mauritania or places where you don't think the U.S. military has troops, in Turkish Kurdistan, in Syrian Kurdistan, in Iraqi Kurdistan. The guys were out running, like their patrol routes are on Strava. The perimeter of the base was on Strava. Like all the streets within the base was on Strava. They were running around buildings, around quadrangles. That stuff blew up, and it's like, sweet. Well, you guys didn't think anything of it, and this is what happened. And now this huge security disclosure has happened. And similarly here, you would have thought that someone would be like, hey guys, that's probably not a good idea. But it's just, I feel as though if there was any big teachable moment from this, this is an example of to me and Francis, I presume, speaking for you, buddy, this isn't a surprise at all. Like, if anything, the only surprise is that it doesn't happen more often.
It's a thing that I didn't think of myself, that would not occur to me. Look, I'm not in the business of nuclear secrets or secrets.
But no,
I
mean like sensitive information that you have to study for your job for promotion being like in the same way that, I mean, I don't know how much you dealt with property, but anyone who has ever dealt with the Army property system knows that if you were ever trying to figure out an item from its national stock number, because oftentimes like it's just not particularly useful to like search it online, and it's so hard to figure out what stuff is unless you've got someone who actually has access to PBUS and knows how to use it. But if you ever Googled a national stock number trying to figure out what the item was so that you could inventory it, before the whole Chelsea Manning thing even, everyone knows, anyone who did this knows exactly what I'm going to say. What would come up more often than not was WikiLeaks, because entire property books, like theater purchased equipment property books, had been posted on there. So you wouldn't find what you were looking for. You just find the same name of the item that was on your your hand receipt in some weird abbreviation that didn't tell you anything. But that stuff had all been leaked to WikiLeaks one way or the other, and then obviously after the thing with Manning, that it got even bigger. But to me, this kind of thing being blown up does not surprise me at all. And if anything, I reckon that this kind of story is going to get more common as just more and more, devices become available. It becomes more standard to have access to 4G or 5G or LTE data wherever you go. And, people keep making apps for stuff like studying and so on and so forth. And this stuff's just going to get bigger and bigger. Like, you're going to see more and more of this. So to me, when you're like, damn, America, the security establishment, it's like, yeah, well, the security establishment, in as far as the military is concerned, is often just, like Francis said, 18, 19, 20-year-old kids who are just like, well, fuck it, I got to study this secret shit. I'm going to do it on my phone at Burger King. And then now, and now you've disclosed the location of America's nuclear arsenal in Europe, which is a good thing, but perhaps not the thing you were intending for when you were going for promotion points.
Sure. And I do see later on in here that they do mention Quizlet for Bellingcat was able to find sets with questions about carrying out drone strikes using an MQ-9 Reaper. On Quizlet. Man. I mean, look, we talked like 2-3 years ago about how drone operators might be getting bronze stars with an R device for remote. How do you think you're going to get that if you're not studying how to kill somebody from a trailer outside of Reno? These are the things that are necessary to learn. So I get it. Just lock it down a little bit. Maybe and this is a perfect opportunity for the military to come up with its own thing. It's secure. And you can put it on your phones, and you can do all of the, it creates a thing that does not upload it to anywhere else. You create it, it stays on your phone, and it doesn't go anywhere else. Actually, that's called the Keep app, or actually, no, not the Keep app. That's the Memos app. Use your Memos app. Don't do this shit. Figure something else out, or keep doing this if your goal is to expose nuclear secrets, but in like a way that doesn't get you in trouble, because there is always, Nate, the off chance that this is a coordinated effort by a bunch of nuclear technicians in Belgium who are just like, it's kind of fucked up that we have nukes here in Belgium, the cradle of waffles. We should
the inventor of French fries.
we should do what we can to expose this to the rest of the world. I doubt it. I
do laugh though at the idea that that's going to be disclosures similar to what Chelsea Manning had to do deliberately are just going to happen by accident because people are really stupid. That seems like it would track with the way the world's been going.
I'm naming my flashcards El Monstero by Lady Gaga. That's probably incorrect. I don't think she has a thing called El Monstero, but you get where I'm going for here. Nate, I feel like this is going to be you're right. This is going to be a thing that's going to keep happening because everybody has a phone. I mean, hell, they tried to get rid of TikTok at one point in time, and you're always going to have people, the people in the old guard who are going to be pissed off. But let me tell you something, man. All this shit happened before, just in more of an analog way. You know, like people writing down their stuff and doing tests and just throwing it away rather than burning it or sending it through a shredder or any of the things that you're supposed to do. It's just a lot easier to fuck up now. I'm glad that it seems that nobody's going to get into big trouble for this because how are they? How are they supposed to know? I didn't fucking know. I would have been doing this too. I don't know shit. And then oh, by the way, these are all connected to the internet. Well, yeah, that makes sense. I guess we shouldn't be doing this. But then again, also I'm that Air Force guy trying to let the Belgians know about how much I appreciate their waffles by telling them about all the nukes that we have there. So. It's this is a good way moving forward towards disarmament of nuclear secrets of America by completely fucking up constantly.
Yeah, agreed. Absolutely agreed. But you know what, Francis?
Keep on it, Joe. Keep doing Joe things. Joe, if there's one thing that's going to bring down the U.S. Army, it's fucking Joe, one way or another. Most of the, there's of the problems that the United States military has, like at least 70% of it comes from like people who are lieutenant colonels and up. But man, those E4s and below, man, you can't sleep on the damage that they can do, even completely by accident. You think it's bad when they're fucking up on purpose, man. It's even worse when they're fucking up on accident.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know what, Francis? There's other ways we can fuck up on accident, and that would be to not mention the bonus for this week.
Yes, the bonus this time, it is another Zoo Crew episode. Speaking of stupid soldiers online, Joe and not Army Joe, Joe Kasabian and Carrie Shockey and I once again back on the Zoo Crew talking about a self-published book about from a military officer who claims that it's not political but also fuck Marxists and the military is too woke. Which is now like a best-selling book. So once again, Nate, we're learning that the real grift is to be a right-winger, not a left-winger.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think our experience has borne that out as well.
Keep that in mind. All the people who think like, oh, you're just doing this for the money. We could make so much more money if we decided to go the Dan Bongino, the Dan Oingo Boingo.
Ding Babongo, yeah, exactly.
Sell Bingo Bongo, selling sunglasses worn by operators route. So enjoy.
I mean, for people who are unaware, you can do a lot of fucking sideways shit as active duty if you don't throw on your uniform and rank while you do it. You can almost do whatever you want as long as it's not illegal.
Yeah, that's why we have so many white supremacists in the military. It's not technically against the rules.
I mean, as long as your organization doesn't advocate for the overthrow of the United States government, you're probably fine. And even some of the ones that do, assuming a Democrat's president.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter. The leash is incredibly long. Until you fucking kick open the door with your weird inbred family on January 6th, you're off scot-free for the most part.
I don't want to read this book.
I won't read it.
I'm not going to.
Oh my God, he actually stole the title. Okay, so there's another book, and the topic of them is even funnier. Now, this isn't new for self-published books, right? To steal the title of another book and then ape off the clicks. Someone did that to my book. Granted, they stole the entire book.
Sideways. They stole your entire book.
That
Sideways.
was one of them. There were several. There's another one called Irresistible Revolution, Confronting Race, Class, and the Assumptions of LGBT Politics by Urvashi Vod, which I'm going to assume stands in direct opposition to anything that our friend the lieutenant colonel said, and is actually published by a real publisher. I'm going to assume he knew better, and that's why he did that.
So what I'm hearing from all of this, Joe, really is that we need to figure out a good pen name for you.
And get you canceled.
Well, and just so we can like start like publishing some of this bullshit, but just in a way that like
Where we can get the money, but nobody knows it's actually our names. You know, if we're going to do something like that, we shouldn't talk about it on a podcast.
I mean, not even that it like nobody knows our names, but like literally, let's just like steal the text from like one of these and just I mean, it's not like any of these guys are going to hire an actual IP lawyer. I mean, like, don't get me wrong. I mean, they could try, but it's what are they going to do? Like, you stole a thing from me that I stole from somebody else.
I mean, this guy probably could get an IP lawyer right now.
One of the recommended books is, of course, The Deep Rig, How Election Fraud Caused Donald J. Trump the White House by a Man Who Did Not Vote for Him. Or What to Send His Friends Who Ask, Why Do You Doubt the Integrity of Election 2020? That's the entire title.
I mean, that's just good editing right there, is really what that is. I mean, that's someone who's kept it really tight. They just like, they're making sure they're only hitting the high points, and they're just really, they're just making sure that, they're really being as concise as possible.
There's a typo in the title. It's still incredible energy. And it is like 1,000 fucking ratings, because of course it does. But like, this guy's 100% going for that title, or that group. He may have finally took this down because if you click on his author profile, there's nothing there anymore. I'm assuming that he was ordered to withdraw the book and edit it. So if he did republish it while he's on active duty, they could make no mention of his military rank.
Censorship strikes again.
Good. Fuck you.
Listen to this. While a Major Laumeyer attended the Air Command and Staff College, where he published The Better Minds of Space. The paper explores the U.S. military's role in space beyond geosynchronous Earth orbit. On the Information podcast, Lohmeyer said his fascination with Marxism began after that, when he was pursuing his second master's degree in philosophy and military strategy at the Air University School of Advanced Air and Space Studies.
Wait, what? The what and the who and the what? Like, what sort of like bullshit degree mill is that? Like, is this like an actual thing?
The Air University School of Advanced Air and Space Studies.
I mean, it's like probably like the Naval War College.
Yeah, where it's like, it's a PhD, but is it?
Well, the Naval War College is kind of the same way in that, yes, they do bestow PhDs onto people, but they are not respected by fucking anyone. The thing is like, they're widely known for being kind of fine with plagiarism. Like, it's been a problem.
Right. It's just a place for like old white dudes who went to West Point to take some time off from the military and like air quotes get an education and then go back onto the military. Just like take a year or two off to get a degree in philosophy of military strategy. What the fuck does that even mean? Are you just reading a bunch of fucking Napoleon? Come on now.
It's mostly a history degree from what I understand.
But just fine. Just say that. Let's see. My interactions with the senior leaders in Air Force and Space Force have been very positive. They care a great deal about the people and the lethality of force, Laumeyer said during the interview. However, leaders may be afraid if they don't get on board with diversity training, they will face scrutiny or might not get promoted, he said, adding that liberal ideas are welcome, whereas the ideas from more conservative voices are criticized or silenced. It's probably because you guys are a bunch of fucking assholes.
I'm looking at the senior leader biographies of the Air University, and one person is not white.
I mean, that's on brand for the Air Force. The Air Force Academy is on the down low, probably one of the weirder forms of academics in the military.
Air Force would be, if they were the religion, they'd be the Mormons.
No, they're weirdly evangelical.
Like, because they're in Colorado, which is kind of like the weird epicenter for like born again studies in the West.
Yeah, everybody's trying to make a Gulch somewhere out in fucking Colorado.
I invite him to go. I'm sure his education of being a pilot will help him survive in the desert. I look forward to his attempts.
Lohmeyer told Woods that he's received many messages of support from active duty members on the book's release. Yeah, I'm fucking sure.
Of course he fucking did. We know you did.
Thank you for speaking up, because we don't have a voice anymore. Like, these people got away with saying like the most heinous racist shit constantly, and they were able to say it because they were officers, and then nobody could tell them no. And then all of a sudden, you get somebody's just like, "Hey, maybe you shouldn't say slurs," because that kind of fucking sucks. And all of a sudden, everybody's being fucking silenced.
Yeah,
And it's always officers. It's always the whiny little, the officers.
I think it's because, honestly, like, NCOs and Joes can say a lot. And they can't really
get away with a lot of shit.
Yeah, and it's because, well, NCOs and Joes are uneducated swine or whatever, but like officers fall under like conduct unbecoming of an officer and a gentleman or whatever, which is slightly higher. But it's all kind of a vibe. You know, and it's very stupid, like how I talked about where this guy's becoming like the fucking new right-wing star. And it turns out that's true. Matt Gaetz accused pedophile Ken Buck of Colorado and our friend Dan Crenshaw all can't stop talking about him. And of course, Gaetz, according to the Washington Post, called Lohmeyer's work patriotic and praised him for speaking out against, quote, the attempted wokeification of our military. I'm gonna fucking pour bleach into my eyes.
So I mean, there's a lot of things going on there, obviously, and just in general too, the fact that it's always like, oh, like, you know, we're being silenced, whatever else, and then immediately, oh, I'm getting a lot of support from everybody. It's like, well, yeah, it's because you're not actually a contrarian. You're just saying whatever. But I say all that, and I just sent you both a thing. And I want you to take a look at the picture in the group chat of the study with the world-class faculty of both civilian and active duty scholars. And I just want you to look at what a world-class faculty looks like according to the Air Force.
Oh, jeez.
I just want to point out that at least one of them is just like straight up just like wearing a work shirt and suspenders. And like the guy on the left, I'm pretty sure his face is just like photoshopped in.
Yeah, he looks very added in later.
His head is very large compared to the rest of his body. And if you were, when I say very large, I encourage you to look up this picture because this man's head looks about the same size as, like, I don't know, like it's about as big as Charlie Kirk's actual face is small. It's it's fucking weird. The whole thing's fucking weird.
He's lit wrong. So that whoever that is, somebody took a picture and then badly photoshopped them in, which respect. I've done that before.
Do you see the woman who's kind of like, you know, there's like the smiling dude with the khaki blazer in the very front, and there's the one right behind him. She also kind of looks like part of her forehead is missing, maybe?
Well, she's got a lot of sun. There's just sun directly on her.
Is that what it is? Because she also kind of looks vaguely like she's photoshopped in.
I mean, this whole thing, it's so fucking pixelated anyway.
It's the picture of Nate, but the whole fucking...
And like, I'm just like looking at their program, and yeah, every student writes a master's level thesis making an original contribution to the field of strategy and security studies. And it's just, I can't imagine that there like any good actual work is coming out of this.
As I read more about this guy's book and him, I feel like our theory holds true that he did this on purpose, right? Like if you were going to write a book and then you're an active duty, you wouldn't directly target or talk about literally anyone that could be even minutely construed as being anywhere in your chain of command or being connected to the Pentagon in any way, right? Like if you valued your career. He did just that. He called them the, quote, Pentagon spokesperson, which obviously talks about Press Secretary John Kirby because he is the Pentagon spokesperson, and said that like he was engaging in reverse racism of some kind by saying there were too many white pilots. Now, the problem is that's actually a pretty popular right-wing talking point that never occurred. So like he called out someone effectively by name and then lied about them.
As always, you can follow me at Army Strang, follow Nate at In These Deserts, and follow the podcast at Hell of a Way. We've got writings, we've got more shows. I'm going to be doing more videos soon, hopefully, and we're always here making content for you. Check us out here on the free show and check us out on Patreon. Hell of a Way to Die. Thanks, and we'll talk to you next week.